Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you with us this evening. With all that's going on in the world these days, I want to start off by thanking you all for joining us, and I hope everyone is treating themselves and others with tenderness. My name is Indialina Gonzalez, and I'm the features editor of Poets and Writers magazine. And today we are celebrating the brilliant debut poets included in our January-February inspiration issue. Now, our annual Debut Poets feature is in its 21st year running, and it's included in the first issue of every year. For this roundup, we highlight 10 authors whose first full-length poetry collections were published in the prior 12 months. We ask the poets a series of questions, ranging from the conception of their collections, to what influences their written work, to the practicalities of being a writer, such as how they find time to write, how they went about structuring their books, and more. This time around, our 10 dazzling debut poets created collections wherein the delicate ecosystem of the poem is carefully tended to. In their responses to our questions, they remind us to be patient with our growth and to honor the time it may take for our creative vision to align with our skill set. Today, we have the absolute pleasure of listening to and sharing Zoom space with Esther Lin, author of Cold Thief Place, published by Alice James Books, Nadia Alexis, author of Beyond the Watershed, published by Cabin Cary Press, Lena Moses Schmidt, author of True Mistakes, published by University of Arkansas Press, and Sean Ballard, author of Second Nature, published by BOA Editions. I am overjoyed to have you all joining us today, and our hearty congratulations on the publication of your debuts. Some quick housekeeping notes to keep in mind. You all know the drill by now. We kindly ask that our audience members remain muted throughout the entirety of the event so we can fully enjoy the authors without any disruption or background noise. Additionally, please feel free to utilize the chat feature and share any questions you may have for the writers so we can incorporate as many of them as possible at the end when we get to the Q&A. And on that note, this is the gentlest of reminders to keep the chat a respectful space for literary conversation. So easy, right? Additionally, please consider becoming a member of the Poets and Writers community if you aren't already, so we can continue offering programs such as this one and producing even more exciting editorial features. We'll provide a link in the chat to our membership page for those of you who are interested. We have also included and created a bookshop page, which has the titles of all 10 of our debut poets, which include tonight's authors, of course. So should you desire to purchase their works and support independent booksellers in the process, which we love, that link will be shared in the chat, as well as a link to the online feature. Now, the online feature is noteworthy because it includes an extended version of these authors' thoughtful responses that appear in print alongside audio clips. So please enjoy those extra goodies as well. To further contextualize everything, this is special because this is a two-night event that will take place today and tomorrow, and it will include readings from the authors as well as conversations about their individual paths to publication and much more. Tomorrow evening at the exact same time, so easy to remember, we'll be welcoming the second half of this brilliant group for part 2 of this event. So if you haven't registered for that and you're free to join us, please do so. We'll share the events page in the chat right now because tomorrow's event has a different Zoom link. So please do not try to log in with this Zoom link. Yeah? Cool. Our first author this evening will be Esther Lin. Esther was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and lived in the United States as an undocumented immigrant for 21 years. She is the author of Cold Thief Place, winner of the 2023 Alice James Award, and longlisted for the 2025 National Book Awards, as well as The Ghost Wife, winner of the 2017 Poetry Society of America's Chapbook Fellowship. She was a 2019 to 2020 Writing Fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown and a 2017 to 2019 Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford University. Currently, she is a faculty member at Warren Wilson's MFA program, and she co-organizes the UndocuPoets, which promotes the work of undocumented poets and raises consciousness about the structural barriers they face in the literary community. Welcome, Esther.
Thank you so much. Thank you, India. Thank you, Kevin, for organizing this. This is such a beautiful event. I'm honored to be here. I'm going to read my 3 parts of my title poem. Oh, it's not my title poem. 3 pieces from The Ghost Wife, which is a long poem that speaks to a Chinese myth my father told me about a wife who was also a ghoul, considered the ideal wife among this section of Chinese culture. And I tied her to writing about my mother who had passed away in 2011. It's called The Ghost Wife, who, after years with her husband, years of rearing their strapping boy, is scorched by an eye. She was gathering laundry. The sun stuttered from the clouds. The rice bubbled on the stove. Her hands and face bubbled too. She did not cry out. She did not speak. She was hurried indoors. What to do? The neighbors, the talk. The thing to do was lay her in a coffin upstairs and close the lid. Such wives were revered by my grandmother and her grandmother. Who knew what single women thought? Single, the sickly, the ugly, or kept back to tend aging parents. A role my mother prepared me for. To fold sheets, call credit card companies, make light chatter, drive. She died suddenly, my mother, before she could enjoy this. 3 years later, I did the unthinkable. I married. According to the folk tales, it is not the union of inhuman to human that is the great metaphor. You are not nothing before you marry. Rather, you are simply one without a story. Become a wife. That is a metamorphosis worthy of legend. It's my sister who authorizes that mother be unplugged. My father and I don't go with her. He leaves, then returns sad. The next day, my sister wants to watch the latest zombie program. A man can't bring himself to shoot his wife as she wanders the streets. Dead, she remains lovely, dress damp, feet bare as if returned from a party, pumps slipped off and left in the foyer. The man readies himself at the second-story window with a chair and rifle. He stands on the blacktop. He is looking at the door. Hello, my love. Will you open up? At the credits, my father leans back, clears his throat. He says, I can tell one better. And I'm going to close a poem that I wrote before Trump was in office. And I hope it's a poem that I won't have to read again so often. But there we go. This poem is called When Ice Came for Me. And in this poem, I kind of imagine going to those cave paintings in France where there are those, those very, very ancient paintings of animals from prehistory. It's called When Ice Came for Me. In the caves of Lascaux, this is what I thought. Not huge bison balancing on dainty legs. Not cat rising from low-slung bellies. Not even the single hand blazing out of 20,000 years. I was a woman out of time and place. Illegal immigrants do not go to France. In our history, there is no pre-literate woman crouched right here, fingers dipped in red and ochre pigment she'd grind by day, and someone at her side holding a light. Always someone kindling her brow with that light. In a dream, the registrar lobby is packed. A uniform tells us no one leave. ICE is doing their work. My professor, you know the one, says nothing. Identification is demanded. Lines form. Rendering an animal on 8 legs instead of 4, the guide says, gives a static image the appearance of movement. A flickering torch causes the animals to race across the walls. Horned oryx follow me. 2, 4, 6, each checking the other. Rhinoceros, Last come the lions, female and male on 8 legs. This is how I flee. My legs tripled, doubled, in a place where I should not be. I piss and I bleed here. All around me, animals leap. Thank you.
Mm.
Wow. Thank you, Esther. That was really beautiful, very clear-eyed poetry. The sun stuttered from the clouds. I'll never forget that one. Thank you. All right. Look at all those hearts. I love it. Our next author is Nadia Alexis, a poet, writer, and photographer born to Haitian immigrants in Harlem. She is the author of a hybrid poetry and photography collection, Beyond the Watershed, which was a finalist for the 2022 Ghost Beach Press Prize in Poetry and longlisted for the 2025 Maya Angelou Book Award. She has earned numerous honors, including a Literary Arts Fellowship from the Mississippi Arts Commission, a Mississippi Star Teacher Award, and recognition as the Poet of the Year honoree for the Haitian Creatives Digital Awards. A fellow of the Callaloo Creative Writing Workshop in the Watering Hole, she holds a PhD and MFA from the University of Mississippi. The floor is yours, Nadia.
Thank you, India. There is so many people. I didn't know how many people were going to be here, but my heart is thumping. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks, y'all, for coming through who are in the audience. I'm going to read a couple poems from my book. And one thing I'll say, just because I mentioned her in one of my poems, there's someone, a Haitian voodoo spirit named Ezeli Danto, and she is known as the mother of Haiti because she was important for the Haitian Revolution, but she's also important for women and children who are survivors of victims of abuse. So I discovered her when I was writing the book and wrote some poems to her. Watershed. I arrive at my father's feet, a dying mapu tree. He covers his eyes with mud while goats feast on my fallen hair. I hear my mother call for the Lord to send just enough rain for our lungs and her carnations to see a new season. My mother always said boys are best at taking. I once loved a boy who turned pomegranates in my yard into salt. In the mirror, I see a donkey's head without a home, and she teaches me how to wail for cover. My mother and I kneel on uncooked rice. Sweat of our hands no longer remembers its owner. Our knees become prunes. One night I see my father weep and rock like a forgotten river. How he must know what it's like to fight against disappearance. The longer I stay in the home my lover and I built on this mountain, the more I tire of circadian leaps into the field of cacti. Every year, Lake Azuye rises and forces change on the trees and birds and people of the watershed. They no longer believe the water will leave them. I spend nights running from hail and company of vultures. I make peace with the ways my father and I look away from errors and ruin. My parents make rituals of mornings and I follow in their footsteps anyway. But my mother says I can build a new home from clouds and I believe her. A Horse's Arrival after A Horse at Quarto Beach by Valda Nogueira. Clouds move quickly above your gate and my feet lodged in glassy tainted sands. Your faint-colored skin hangs, seeming to have aged quicker than God or your mother intended. I like to think we arrive in the paths of each other's hungers. Oh, mare, I want to ask how you walk smoothly despite devastation. Sometimes I can do this too. And yes, I notice how the ocean water turned on all its fish, how the oysters have disappeared, the more humans force metal pollution. I ask for permission to touch your neck and take your lean forward as a yes. Rest my palm there, startled. It feels like the pulses of three dancing women in your flesh, perhaps from another land. When I was a little girl, I thought anything was possible, like leaving Earth on a cardboard spaceship or becoming my own hero. Dear Mare, closer now. I know what it's like to be dominated against your will. I know what it's like to stand in the face of other beings' selfishness. I know I can be selfish. Your black hair, dull silk blowing in the wind. I search for answers in your body's shadows, only to stumble empty handed and back into my own longings. And the last poem is called Pray. Prey is the spelling. My lover once said a woman is best with a mouth as a closed door. If she should want to open it, let it be brief and of bright blooms. If she should dare to make herself bigger than a man with her voice full of restless bells, she must be ready to make war with hands bare. If she can't, she must nail her tongue to a tree's bark, or he'll bury her into earth's belly. I no longer wish to be the ground carrying him, no longer wish to follow rules that drain me of fresh water. Today, I am guilty of becoming a falcon, every bit of him for my consumption. For years, I have felt alone and dry-bellied. But tonight, I am Ezeli Danto's child, armed with scarred vines and silver. I strike, and he falls like leaves under the weight of a half woman, half mountain. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Nadia. That was so gorgeous. A lot of love in the chat, so I'm not going to repeat it, but someone did say that hurt me in a good way. And I was like, yep, that's how you know when poetry's real, when it hurts so good. So thank you for that. All right. Our third author this evening is Lena Moses Schmidt. Lena is a writer and artist. She's the author of the poetry collection True Mistakes, University of Arkansas Press 2025, which was selected by Patricia Smith for the Miller Williams Poetry Series. Her poems, essays, and visual essays appear in Best New Poets, Ninth Letter, The Believer, Indiana Review, The Rumpus, Narrative, Cincinnati Review, the Yale Review, Terrain.org, and elsewhere. She is the recipient of a MacDowell Fellowship, and she's also received support from Vermont Studio Center and the Sewanee Writers Conference. She currently lives in New York. Take it away, Lena.
Thank you so much, India. Thank you for organizing this and for gathering all of us here. It's really an honor to be included and to be reading with these amazing, amazing poets and to hear you all read your work. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm just going to read a few poems from True Mistakes. The first poem I'm going to read is from a series that runs throughout the collection. That are basically poems written to a version of myself in the future. And this one is called Dear Future Me, number 15. You were so new, I hadn't dreamt of you yet. And so, existing only in reality, you weren't yet made real. You were the reflection of a crepe myrtle branch swaying on a window, but not the branch itself. There was no branch, only its reproduction. I'd meet you later with my mind turned off. Back then, you were only a single thought trapped, with no one there to think it. These weekly slow walks, packed with pink and green. Saturdays keep happening. That's how I know the future. It doesn't need me necessarily. You'll be fine, won't you? I'm just going to lie down, rest a bit, and then I'll have more time to think you up, Time, meanwhile, should feel free to rearrange me into branches and scatter me with air sculpted into hard white diamonds. I don't care. The world never ends. Just now, the neighbor banged on our shared wall, asking me with her fist to quiet down. But the only thing I'm doing is sitting here, holding that gray branch inside my mind. Or maybe it wasn't my neighbor, but you, warning me to stop. Thinking gets so loud. I know it's a problem, that I prefer to think instead of live. I reason my way across the glass. Someone else on some other side is dragging me there, and I'm helpless, copying myself. Are things easier inside these four frames? Wrong question. Is diminishment easy? Asking that, I felt a hand. I felt you here with me. You've survived it. Now you're digging. This next poem is called Verdigris. The pond was cold. I swam through velvet, my body light green as the years oxidizing on a copper charm. I was in Maine to see two friends get married. The pond just happened to be there, a wet shape for me to divide. 6 years later, these friends would have a child. Though suspended in the time between two shores, I had no idea. Meanwhile, I slid into my decision quietly, without a sound. It weighed nothing. Rilke writes of death as something we're born with, that we nurture within us our entire lives. I teach my death how to walk. I teach my death how to talk, how to drive. It's the only thing I'll bear, the only thing I'll raise. After dinner, Jay asks me if I've heard the ice break on the river. I wish. I want to hear the voice. The other day, he says, he was standing on his pond when it split in half, only he didn't hear it because he was listening to music. I thought of my own version of a pond and the September rain jumping off it. Swift acrobats, me and the rain. Age was still a substance I could slip in and out of. It is luck to be able to perceive when the momentous happens. Without knowing it, I teach my death how to run right through me like a crack. And my last poem I'll read is called Awe. At first I missed them, how I pinged like a roof beneath their rain, but I no longer believe in epiphanies. I have 23 of them while reading the transit of Venus, underlining each contradictory insight the words trip off within me, and then promise to never have one again. I used to be such a dutiful student of consciousness. Last night in the mirror, I found another bright gray hair curled up from my crown, asking, how long left? Who are you? I can replicate a fragment of the old feeling by going on a hike with an unbelievable view planted at the end. The closer I walk to it, my feet in the dirt, the sun on my face, the nearer I arrive to a realization. Anticipation tightens. I can sense it there, the ocean and drop of cliffs waiting like a dog in his joy on the other side of a door. The way death waits brushes my arm throughout this allotment we call a day. I've never known what to do with beauty, as if it's a question of ambition and not living, as if I understood what beauty was, as if it doesn't constantly revise itself. I called the view unbelievable, but what exactly about nature is unbelievable? The always present sensation that I may never encounter it again. To be so full of nature, I cease to perceive. The hand on the other side of the door, the fingers touching my sleeve. And maybe it will be a joy to go off into forever. Not just for me, but for nature. Relieved to not have to be looked at, the way I look at myself as if I wasn't myself. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lena. You have such a lovely tone on the page where it's both personal and philosophical at the same time, which is, wow. Also, the I teach my death refrain. Whoa, that was it right there. All right. Ready, guys? Our final reader this evening is Sean Ballard. Sean's chapbook, Flight, was the recipient of the 2018 Sunken Garden Poetry Prize and was published by Tupelo Press. And his full-length collection, Second Nature, received the 23rd annual A. Poulin Jr. Prize and was published by Boa Editions in 2025. His writing has appeared in Narrative, Obsidian, Oxford Poetry, Poetry Northwest, The Atlantic, the Journal of the Academy of American Poets, the Missouri Review, the Rumpus, the New York Times Magazine, and other such literary journals. He holds an MFA and a PhD. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, India and Kevin, for your care and for hosting this event. And thank you, Esther, Nadia, and Lena, for your poems and for your presence. And my gratitude for everyone who is here, all of you that are lovers of words. Thank you for allowing us to read these poems and spending this time with us this evening. I'm going to read 3 poems. I won't give a lot of context to them. Hopefully they're pretty clear. If not, then I guess that leaves some time for the Q&As for you to ask some questions. All right. So I'm going to read a persona poem first. The ghost of Johnny Taylor encourages the lone fledgling of a robin to jump and reminds himself that the first love to break his heart wasn't a woman at all. Did I ever tell you about the time I called out a man's name and my father never looked back? Now, each time I take the stage, Mama asks, "Who do you think you are?" I ask for the lights to be turned down. It's better that way for a man to live until the only desire before me is a void. Picking cotton is hard on the feet, so I learned to open my mouth wide with one verse in the earth and one for the angel of the Lord. Sometimes in a spotlight bright as the North Star, a man can burn the sweet of his sins, or the way can be as clear as looking into the red tip of a cigarette. Baby, at the heart of every song that answers to the body's demands, begging, I mean a real deep begging, like an invitation to a soft bed at the end of a cul-de-sac, is a prayer. So can you blame me if I drank from the well of echoes like every city was my own to keep? Listen, babe, if I felt it, I sang it. If I sang it, I've done it. Our wings eventually take the flight of our fathers. What do you think all this leaving is for? The next poem is a cento. I'm actually going to read 2 of them that are centos. I took the words of Walt Whitman and I wanted to create a sonnet. And so I'm going to read Walt Whitman's words. A one-sided conversation with Whitman using his words, or a sonnet written on the topic of silence. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand. You should look through my eyes. I perceive, after all, so many uttering tongues, apart from the pulling and hauling stands what I am. I smell the white roses, sweet-scented and glowing. I reach to the leafy lips and breathe the air and leave plenty after me. It is you talking just as much as myself. I act as the tongue, calling my name from flower beds or vines or tangled underbrush, the smell of sedgy grass by the shore to a drudge of cotton fields. I lean. This is the grass that grows wherever the land is. noiselessly passing palmfuls of their hearts and giving them to be mine. My father, my beloved poet, you seem to be looking for something at my hand. I do not press my fingers across my face. This is my last poem, and I want to thank you all once again for being here and joining with us and these words that we've put on the page that have come from so many before us. If you were to ask me the state of my country, I would say, in the clear light that confuses everything, a tree grows as one might have grown in the Garden of Eden. It started its wonder like any tree in the world would, small, significant, having a purpose, a desire to bud leaves. The neighbors called it an elm, a Siberian elm, because some could see into Russia, perhaps in strain or collusion. But this is not the point. This is the light of the mind, cold and planetary, the forest of buoyancy that suffered Alexander, who from his true course turned the hands of this telling to a tree pool on a hill overlooking an icy river. And now the greenhouse is dark, gone. And here must I remain as a storm-struck oak lean closer to the house. I say this to be beautiful. It is not the chambers of the heart which holds the affairs or the tree, but all we know of history. It is said they planted trees by the graves. In some narratives, the young girl throws poison peas out the window. In some narratives, there is no such window. Thank you.
Wow. All right, Sean, thank you so much. That was really special. Someone said that you all are word healers, and that is so it. That is it. You also said, what do you call all this? What do you think all this leaving is for? I don't want you guys to ever leave us. I want you to stay. That's what I want. Oh my. Okay. You all are joining me back on the screen. Thank you all for imbuing this Zoom atmosphere with such razor sharp intellect and a great depth of feeling. That's really the juxtaposition that we need. We are now heading into the Q&A portion of the event. So as a reminder, if anyone in the audience has a question for our authors, please feel free to share in the chat, and I promise to incorporate as many of your questions as I humanly can. So I'll go ahead and get us started. For the feature, we asked you all how long it took to write your respective collections and find a home for it. But I want to delve a little deeper and ask you all if you could share a bit about what the publication process was like. So when did you start aiming for publication, and how did it ultimately happen for you? And what was the journey like from a very real perspective? Because we're seeing you, at the end of it, right, when you have the book. But what was it like to get to this point? That's why it's helpful for our audience.
I'll start us off. It took me a long time to complete the book. I actually wrote one book, and then as it was getting rejected, I wrote a second book. And as both were being rejected, I interwove the two books together. Something that I had felt was like I couldn't do. They're written from such different moments in my life and such different perspective. And I felt my aesthetic or my art change from the first to the second book. But, I think that was a little bit my ego just getting in the way. And when I interwove the two books, I, of course, saw that they're written by the same person. They spread a great breadth of subject matters. I sent that one out, and it was picked up right away. But that's after maybe four cumulative years of submissions. I'm sure people have had longer journeys, but I would say I started writing in 2016 and the book came out in 2025, excuse me. It was a process.
Yeah, I think for me, I started submitting a very early version of this manuscript, like meaning there were probably like 5 poems from that like have made it into this current manuscript that were in like the original manuscript that I was sending around in like 2016, but I was like still noodling with it as I was sending it out. And I was getting like some encouraging responses, but I was sending it out on and off for about 2 years. And eventually I felt like it wasn't like I didn't feel connected with the manuscript anymore. And I took a couple years away from it and I wasn't writing that many poems for a few years. And then I returned to writing poems a lot in like 2020, 2021, and felt like I had a draft that I was ready to submit again in like 2023. And then it got picked up about a year and a half later, I think. So also it felt very long. But also I'm just very grateful that I took my time, I think.
Yeah, I think the oldest poem in my book is probably from 2014. Like it was published in 2014. So I identify with the, um, I don't know, most of the poems are not that old, but some of them are, right? And so I think I was just writing about um, what literally kept me up at night. And I realized that I wanted to write a book. And so I decided I couldn't think of a good reason to go to an MFA program, especially because I'm from New York and I was taking so many workshops and I had a community, with a lot of poets of color in particular. But one day I decided that I wanted to go because I wanted to write a book and then have a different life as well. And so it took me about 3 years to complete the book manuscript. And then my mentors were telling me to submit it. So I submitted it one time the year I graduated from the MFA just to say I did it. And then I didn't for a couple years. I wasn't sure if I wanted to put the book out anymore just because, well, first I wanted to do some revisions, but then I wasn't sure if I still wanted to put the book out because of the content in the book and how it felt like I was sharing so much. It was so personal. I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And now that the book is out, like I'm a completely different person than I was when I wrote a lot of the poems in the book. And in some ways, I'm still the same. But I think that I realized that the book had to be out because other people had to read it. And so I decided not to give up on it. So I submitted it maybe 2 years after that first time. And then like it was like 7 places total. So I did like a couple per year or something like that. And then Kevin Carey told me yes. But I knew once I got that finalist in the fall of 22, I was like, oh, okay, the yes is around the corner. I just don't know how soon. But I was like, okay, I got the finalist, so I'm about to get a yes. And I got it in March of 2023 at my sister's wedding. So it was just like new beginnings all around. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful to the version of me that decided not to give up on this book. It's a good book, right? Thank you for featuring it.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you all for sharing. Yeah, your sister gets married and you get a book. That's wonderful. Two celebrations. Um, I had a different book when I was submitting. I submitted, oh gosh, somewhere in the 2020, from 2020 to 2023. And then I got into a workshop and realized that I needed to totally revamp the book. So the new book I had written, I would say it probably took a year because I now had the experience and the outside experience, not just in the workshop, but learning about family history. And a lot of that made its way into the book. And so I needed to talk to my folks about my ancestors. And so I think that is what delayed this book from becoming what it is today. As far as sending it out, I sent it out to 3 locations, and I got no's on the first 2, and I was just about to take it out. And my wife said, "You should leave it in. I mean, what's the harm of leaving it in? I'm a serial withdrawer. I just withdraw things. I just put them in there just so I can withdraw them. My submittable is a mess. Anyhow, so I decided to leave it in, and that third one was Boa, and that's kind of how it worked out. So I was very grateful. I am very grateful. Thank you for that question.
Thank you all for sharing those answers. I do want to ask, kind of riffing off what you said, Nadia, but this is true for all your books as I see it as a reader. Poetry in specific is very vulnerable. There's like emotional intimacy there between the poet and the reader. And specifically in reading your books, I feel that a lot, whether it's you're bringing in the familial or the ancestral, whatever it is, there's that feeling of like we're very close to you. On a craft level, how do you balance that as a writer, right? Of giving of yourself to the reader, but also knowing where's the limit? Does the limit exist? What does that feel like in the writing process as you're negotiating how much to share, what to pull back on, what to make an image out of? What does that look like for each of you?
Can we start in reverse? Maybe I'm thinking about this question. Is it one that is how do we balance the care and how do we balance craft? Something along that line. Yeah. So I cheat. I use a lot of received forms. I think there's something about aesthetic distance that it creates, but it also allows me to let the form take over, and kind of discover what that poem will be at the end once it's written. And so that's kind of my way. It's a cheat sheet. I go use a sonnet form and use something else, and that's kind of how it works for me.
I love that answer. I think for me, this is such an interesting question. I'm not completely sure, but I think for me that negotiation happens in revising. Um, because first I just need to get something out or something. But I think as far as like share, like deciding what parts of myself or the self or whatever to share, I think for me, a poem feels successful if I've shared something with myself that I didn't know before, or like I surprised myself. And that's kind of like what I'm chasing. This is like a very roundabout adjacent way of answering your question, but that I think is my answer.
I think I'm an open book. I don't mind sharing many things. I think it's lucky for me that my parents, whom I write about quite a great deal, are past. So I don't feel compunctions about what not to say about them. But the end of in the end, in the revision process, as Lena was saying, what I reveal has to be in service of the poem. If a revelation is crucial for the poem, then it must be there. If it's just extra gossip, or if it some way occludes the poem, no matter how angry I am at somebody or vengeful, usually it's vengeance. It has to leave the poem. Everything is in service of the poem, not factual truth, of course.
Yeah, I identify with multiple things that were shared. I'm really into creating metaphor, surprising imagery, and playing with language. So I focus on that a lot in my writing, and I also allow myself to share some of what actually happened and then make up stuff for the rest because the truth is still there. It's just maybe the poem wouldn't be as good if I just stayed to what actually happened. And I want the reader to feel changed when they read my work, and I also want to feel that way too in the process of writing and revising my work. And so I spent a lot of time trying to make myself feel altered, see something in a new way. And I think that makes it really fun. That makes the process of writing really fun, even when the topics are difficult. I think that actually helps me too with writing about things that are difficult because I'm having fun with the other aspects of it. So
I love those responses and sticking to the poetic truth. It doesn't have to be the truth with a capital T, but it still feels real. All right, let's take a question from the audience, which is really interesting. What was the process like to come into your poetic voices and define your space as a poet? I think is always a great question. How did you arrive here with your voice, essentially?
I want to start. I never go first, but I'm going to go first right now. I first thought of just the communities that I am part of and was a part of in person when I lived in New York, like the Women Writers in Bloom Poetry
So I'll
Salon,
just stop.
um, the Women Writers in Bloom Poetry Salon community led by J.P. Howard and Women of Color Writers community workshops in Brooklyn led by Sister BC. Like my coming into myself, my own voice as a writer was very much connected to the communities that I was part of. Like I would share my work and people would tell me, keep writing, keep writing. And I believed them and I felt like, okay, let me keep writing. Like, okay, this is good and I'm feeling this fire to keep writing. So I took a ton of workshops. I did not have the budget to pay for the workshop, so I bartered my skills. I paid for some of them and I bartered my skills, my photography skills. So there's photography, poetry events photographed by me that are on the web. So I just followed what really lit me up, and community really helped me to keep going. And that's just like reading too, reading a lot helped me as well. I would carry books around with me, even if it made my purse heavy. And even if I didn't open it that day, because a lot of times I didn't, but I was walking with the poems, the poets, and the words anyway. It was kind of like how I would carry around my camera all the time. So, yeah, very much um, living poets, ancestral poets, and supporting people that lit me up a lot as well. I think that's one of the best things about community is being able to cheer other people on and their voices.
I think for me, I have to go somewhere I don't want to go. This is an unflattering analogy, but if I feel like I'm writing out of my sewage system, then I'm writing from a place that's truthful and without without a veil. So, and but also without excessive complaining. I'll be honest. I love complaining, and sometimes I'm just complaining. And I love it's easy, it's fun, it's delightful to do. But there are some poems when I'm writing, I'm like, this is me whining. I have to I'm really going to complain, and I have to complain about something that is really hard to talk about. And I haven't quite got the right word for it, but it's like that mucky stuff you step on when you like sometimes get on the New York City subway station. I grew up in New York, Nadia, so I have a lot of experience with it. And it's like that kind of
I'm a New
tarry black
Yorker here.
stuff. Yeah. And that's like when I'm there, then I'm like, okay, I'm writing from somewhere that's truthful. It smells bad, so it must be truthful.
Um, I think for me, um, I feel like I'm like always in the process of trying to find my voice, which is like not to say that I haven't felt like I've found like a voice that is um exciting for me to use or like feels comfortable or like I know what I'm doing, but I also feel like that search for a way to say something is like kind of what makes me interested in poetry. And so part of it is like not really knowing what the voice is, like that is like what entices me. But then beyond that, I mean, yeah, it's just like what Nadia was saying, like reading a lot of poets, being in community with poets, and not only just like sharing poems with one another, but talking about poetry and figuring out kind of like what you think about poetry and like certain kinds of poems and talking a lot about it. And of course, like writing a lot and being okay with like writing a lot of poems that maybe are not very good so you can get to better ones.
I was waiting for everyone else to give me something to say. Um, Seems like a very difficult question. I was thinking, how do you find your voice? The first thing that came to mind is like, I don't know my voice. I'm still trying to figure it out. I find that it's very difficult for me to write love poems. Um, it's just very difficult to write love poems if I'm writing in what I would consider to be me writing this poem. But I discovered when I write in a persona that it is much easier to write those kind of poems that I want to write about my father or about my wife. Um, Otherwise, I just feels like it comes off very cheesy, and maybe that is my voice. Maybe I'm just very cheesy, and so but I don't want to sound cheesy. I want to sound like Johnny Taylor or how I imagine him to sound. Um, and so I don't know just yet, but I like the voices that I hear in many of these poems.
Thank you all for your honesty. I love how different your point of views were on how you tackled that answer. Here's another one from the audience. This is an evergreen question that I love to hear how different writers respond to it. What gives you the confidence to keep going even after rejections?
I don't know. For me, I don't know if I would call it confidence exactly. But I think just loving writing poems and remembering that that's like what it's about. That, I mean, of course, it doesn't always feel like incredible to write or to write poems, but I think just feeling driven by like the want or the curiosity to write something and like the enjoyment of writing something instead of paying attention to will it be rejected? Will it be accepted? Will it belong?
Can't do anything else. Not having a choice helps sometimes. I'm not qualified to do much else. So being a highly specialized, it's like being a hummingbird with a really long bill. I forget what the swordfish something. Um, so not having any other life skills certainly is a good. It's a good motivator. And I'm actually being quite honest. Yeah.
I think um, I just remember that rejection is guaranteed. It's just part
Mm.
of it. There's no way around it. And I think that because I get acceptances, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get the yes eventually. And I think it's just I really love writing poetry, and so I don't know, it's like breathing for me. I don't really know a lifetime where a day in this life that I'm living where I wouldn't be writing poems. And so I am working on writing poems for fun right now because something about having the book out. I don't know, kind of changed things a little bit for me in terms of how I feel when I'm at the page. And um, that's what I'm mostly focused on. And you know, if the poems get published, cool. If they don't. It's about the writing.
Yeah. What was I thinking? I have to stop rejecting myself and stop withdrawing so many things from the queue, and maybe I'll get more rejections. Uh, um, yeah, I don't know. I think rejections for me, they're kind of a blessing. If I get a rejection, I receive a few rejections, I have to go back and revisit the poem, and I want to know what it is that's not coming through. And sometimes those rejections can really save you from, putting something out there that's going to embarrass you later. I've done it. I do it. And so that's why I withdraw so much. But I think that I'm grateful for those readers on the other side who see something that I don't see. And so I'm appreciative of the rejections. I think I'm getting over being rejected. Maybe that'll come back later when I try to publish something and I keep getting no's, and then I'll just quit and go into my corner. But right now, I'm just grateful for them, I suppose. I've been on the other side of doing that thing too, and so now I have a different kind of care thing.
Thank you all. All right, let's do this. Before we wrap up, I want to do like a lightning round where I'll ask you one question. I can't help myself. It's a very broad question, but you all are poets, so I feel that you can field this accordingly. Here's the question. Why poetry? Quick lightning round answer, top of your head.
Secret language to talk to myself.
May I quote Banga? Banga, I know you're out there. To create an intimate archive. I stole it from you, Banga. I'm sorry. Still love you.
Secret language to talk to myself is like literally the perfect answer for me. But instead I'll just say like I just can't not. I don't know. I can't not.
Because it makes me feel alive, and I believe there are people that are also waiting for my poems.
See, you guys are great. I love it. Thank you. Borrowed words, your words, it's all the same at the end. I love it. All right, it's time. So, on behalf of Poets and Writers, I'd like to offer our sincere thanks to Sean, Lena, Nadia, and Esther for joining us and continuing to inspire us with your words and boundless creativity. A round of applause for our beloved Zoom audience as well. You all have been so active tonight in the best of ways. And we will drop once more in the chat the link to our bookshop page, including all 4 titles and the ability to purchase them, as well as the link to the online feature with all the extra goodies it includes, and a link to our membership page for those of you who would like to support our organization and become a member of the Poets and Writers community so we can continue our work of supporting and uplifting wonderful people such as yourselves. Please join us tomorrow evening at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we present part 2 of this Debut Poets virtual celebration featuring readings and conversations with Annie Wenstrup, Benga Avesina, Daniel Ruiz, Bernardo Wade, and Kalehua Kim. The events page link has been dropped in the chat once more, and I promise, similar to this evening, I don't think you're going to miss tomorrow's lineup. I think it's going to be pretty good. So until then, please take good care of yourselves and stay warm out there. And thank you again to our lovely poets. This was beautiful. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who are joining us for the first time tonight in celebration of our 2025 debut poets, my name is India Lina Gonzalez, and I'm the features editor of Poets and Writers magazine. I'm excited to welcome you all to our virtual reading this evening, celebrating the final 5 of the 10 writers included in our annual look at debut poets. This 2-night event started yesterday with readings from Esther Lin, Nadia Alexis, Lena Moses Schmidt, and Sean Ballard. Today we have another brilliant lineup of authors for you all, so you're in for a very special treat. This evening, we have the thrill of hearing from and basking in the words of Annie Winstrup, author of The Museum of Unnatural Histories, published by Wesleyan University Press; Benga Adesina, author of Death Does Not End at the Sea, published by University of Nebraska Press; Daniel Ruiz, author of Reality Checkmate, published by Four Way Books; Bernardo Wade, author of A Love Tap, published by Lookout Books; and Kalehua Kim, author of Melee, published by Trio House Press. Thank you all so much for your virtual presence tonight, and congratulations on your stunning debuts. Our first featured author is Annie Winstrup. Annie is the author of The Museum of Unnatural Histories, Wesleyan University Press 2025, and the recipient of a 2025 Whiting Award in Poetry. Originally from Anchorage, Alaska, she now lives in Fairbanks with her family. Annie received her Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the University of Fairbanks, Alaska, and her Master's of Fine Arts from Stonecoast, the University of Southern Maine's low residency program. Annie held a Museum Sovereignty Fellowship with the Smithsonian Arctic Study Center and was an Indigenous Nations Poets Fellow in 2022 and 2023. Her poems have been published in Alaska Quarterly Review, New England Review, Poetry, and elsewhere. She is a senior editor for Poetry Northwest's Native Torchlight series. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you so much, India, and thank you, Kevin and Emma, for hosting this tonight. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you to my fellow readers. I wanted to share two poems. The first, Ghost Pixels. I've archived beauty all my life. News anchors introduce blue women and blue girls into my home. Their faces imprint on my eyes. Their ghosts float through my mind. The anchor's voice echoes in my sleep. It cries, missing, scandal, dead. No corpses are displayed on screen. Dead girls and women are not art. Life observes the living. Still death echoes behind blue smiles. Girls become women, transfix their bodies into moths. They float, open and shut their wings, their faces. The TV screens broadcast their faces. They smile and wave even in death. Their bodies move like buoys floating across sets. A story, never their lives, breaks like waves. Anchors place women on ticker tape shoulders that echo the news. Missing, scandal, dead, as screens shuffle faces. How beautiful, how lovely the women are. If missing, we hope they're not dead. And when they're dead, we'll dissect their lives into made-for-TV docudramas, like bodies preserved in formaldehyde. Blonde hair floats on screen. Pale, blue-eyed women echo here. Some say it's an aesthetic choice in life to choose who echoes and who to efface. And sometimes I envy the beautifully seen dead women. I, a green woman among blue women. It's not that I want to live as a blue woman. I would not spend my life floating behind a screen. I don't wish for that death. It's only I've never heard an echo of anything but blue. This silence effaces green memories and hollows my life. Silence becomes my body. A bell echoes another story. Ring it. Ring it. How else can I face what's become of my absence? My second poem is Iconography for Nick Sakaloff and Virginia Wilcoxon. That's my mom. I'm not convinced holiness or saints exist. I'm agnostic about God. Still, I like to imagine my great-grandfather leading service inside the Holy Assumption of the Virgin Mary Church. The congregation watches his face, while the iconostasis holds him and the congregation in its gaze. I like to look at the saints. I like how their sad faces absorb incense each day while witnessing prayers. Divine light encircles their heads in a nimbus, like how a cloud constellates around dust, or how the body enfolds spirit. Before the saints and before the church's body, Nick prays in Russian. The believers know that within the saint's nimbus, a portal collapses, the space between I and God, until only prayer, bells, and the whisper of frankincense exist. Where else could terrible longing be born? That night, alone and silent, Nick leaves home. He leaves offerings of moose meat and salmon on porches. He knows that winter's hold thins bodies. In my eyes, I see him. Under a gray sky, snow falls. It velvets his black hair, limbs his lashes, and brows white. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annie. That was so calming. But then you have this incisive language behind it, which is beautiful. I, a green woman among blue women. May we all be green women. That's my hope. Thank you. All right, we're going to follow that up with a reading from Benga Adesina, a Nigerian poet and essayist. Benga is the inaugural Mellon Postdoctoral Fellow in Black, Global, and Diasporic Poetry at the Furious Flower Poetry Center at James Madison University. He received his MFA from New York University, where he was mentored by Yusuf Komunyakaa. He is the co-founder and editor of A Long House, a journal of diasporic art, thought, and literature. He has won multiple fellowships, and his poems have appeared in the Paris Review, Harvard Review, Guernica, Narrative Magazine, the Yale Review, the Best American Poetry, the New York Times Magazine, and elsewhere. His debut collection, Death Does Not End at the Sea, was longlisted for the 2025 National Book Awards and the 2026 PEN Volcker Award. The floor is yours, Benga.
Thank you so much, India. Thank you, everybody. It's amazing to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. Just I was about to come up to read, a train chose that exact time to be passing by my office. I was pausing a little bit before a meeting. I'm going to read 3 poems, a very short one, and then I think 2 normal length poems. The first one, Glory. Glory of plums, femur of glory. Glory of ferns on a dark platter. Glory of willows. Glory of stag beetus. Glory of the long obedience of the kingfisher. Glory of waterbirds. Glory of thirst. Glory of the Latin of the dead and their grammar composed entirely of decay. Glory of the eyes of my father, which, when he died, closed inside his grave and opened even more brightly inside me. Glory of dark horses running furiously inside their own dark horses. The next poem I'm going to read is called I Carried My Father Across the Sea. I carried my father across the sea. He was a child. He was dead. He was the shaft of a long-tailed astrapia. He was a forest of bruise. He wore a door on his face. He wore the black suit of his wedding. The square pocket was still full of his vows. He was light to carry. His burdens and vows that bled out of him, it was heavy with the responsibility of the dead. What sort of a son leaves his father chained to fatherhood? I lifted and propped him up with my frame. I measured the length of him with my length, the feet stuck in sea sand, his weak knees, his arms gripped my sides. As the currents rose, the collar on his broken neck flared into a float. The gash the surgeon's knife left on his head became a hollow. It signaled in the dark. I put my nose to his nose. I put my finger in his mouth. I tied his IV tubes, now a human gill, around our waists and swam in the vein of the water. Look, as fins in the waves said, a son carries a father. Death is not silence. It is where I hear you most clearly. What sort of a son leaves his father's body chained to the dark grievance inside the earth? I carried my father on my back. I felt the bracing inside his afterlife heart on the skin of my spine. He wore his face as a door he promised to open to me. He bled out his vows. Alrighty, my last poem for this evening. It's a poem about James Baldwin. I mean, like most of you, I deeply love James Baldwin, and I'm deeply inspired by James Baldwin. This is called Envoy to the South of France. Begin the scene in Karatausen's film, The Price of the Ticket. Begin with a 17th century 12-room stone house in the French village Saint-Paul-de-Vence and its 28 windows that open to a view of a rose garden, the black scent of olive groves, a swarm of blue monarchs, and the Mediterranean Sea. Inside that room, it was 1987 and James Baldwin was dying. He was on a paneled bed with a red quilt, his arms and legs throbbing and aching. His beautiful fingers were arthritic, his lungs weak and filled with fluid. They said he spoke in whispers. He said he was thirsty. He said he wanted a feast of bread, butter, and salami. His body in that state was like a still life painting, beauty in arrested motion. 3 men nursed him: Lucien, a Swiss painter, his lover; Bernard, a dancer and his confidant; and David, his younger brother. They washed him. It must have felt like a ritual dance. They began with the face. The face is the house of spirits, closing his eyes with the soft pad of their fingertips. Then the dab of a moist washcloth on his forehead and cheeks and a slow circular motion. Then his neck, then his chest. They were gentle, seeking to protect the integrity of his skin. They were waiting with him at a fragile door and did not know how far they could go with him. One put his finger inside a bowl of clean water and dripped it on Baldwin's lips, lest he should be thirsty on his flight to the black heaven. Or perhaps it was suddenly and briefly 1949, and Baldwin is young and wild again and is back in that room in Paris where he wrote Giovanni's Room. All journeys are extraordinary, he once wrote in a letter. I see him. I see a mirror. He turns and faces it. He's combing and parting his hair, fingers adorned with rings. He's watching himself in the mirror, that wicked gap-toothed smile. Duke Ellington's in a sentimental mood is playing. Baldwin is swaying gently now. He winks at us and, ready at last, turns towards that great door of return, glides along the ancestral passageway and crosses it with celestial swagger. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. What a joy.
Thank you, Benga. That was simply beautiful. Music to my ears, absolute music, so many wonderful images. Thank you for that gift. Alrighty, our third reader this evening is Daniel Ruiz, a poet and translator born in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, and raised in Orlando, Florida. His first collection of poetry, Reality Checkmate, was published by Four Way Books in 2025. He earned his MFA from the Michener Center for Writers at the University of Texas in Austin and his BA in Creative Writing in Spanish from Florida State University. In 2016, he was a Fulbright Fellow to Valparaiso, Chile, where he worked with students on literary translation at Playa Ancha University. His poems can be found in Poetry, Bennington Review, New Letters, Missouri Review, Interim, River Styx, and elsewhere. He is currently pursuing a PhD in English and Literary Arts at the University of Denver, where he edits poetry and translations for Denver Quarterly. Take it away, Daniel.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for having me. Thank you to the other readers, obviously. Just want to briefly, before I read, dedicate the portion that I'm going to read to the memory of my grandfather who passed away earlier this week. I don't write poems about him. He told me not to do that. But, I think these poems have, his energy in some kind of way. So yeah, I'm just going to read 3 poems and thank you again. Complicit in the clangor. Stuck in the sky's mind, desire seeks a new cloud to chase down what flies out. But following the mountain path, when one of us slides on sediment, it's an avalanche for fire ants, a rocket launch in our windpipes. The escalator back to that vista we went so far out of our way to witness knocks the ceiling of our skulls like water against a geyser's cork. So much novelty burns to fizzle out. So many stones rub together while nearby an inferno waits with a glass of water. Whole empires are built on this principle. Someone submerged in a poison puddle emerges a Venus flytrap. Lorca says a caterpillar roams the mind, devouring philosophers, but in a caterpillar's mind, philosophers operate on butterflies. The red arrow on the map points to a castle and says, "You are not here." Whole principles are built on this empire. Is this your card? A smile on a skull? Is this your skull? A lantern on a spear? Okay, this one's called Madrugada. The soft trumpet waking me up belongs to Miles Davis. The lamp's beams on my eyes are connected to a head world famous for headaches. My work confuses me. What's so special about breaking longer lines into shorter lines is something I never could articulate beyond the sensation that language set down on a page actually furiously moves omnidirectionally as wind rubs water to form waves which travel 800 kilometers an hour to lick the shoreline into shape, a giraffe's tongue on a Taurus head. There's a difference between a year of dying and a year of the dead, checkbooks and checkpoints, logic and rope. The sword's blade sharpens as you trace it downward, leaving a cut that shoots up. Many things made of steel wobble in the wind, existing not on the page. Some days I wake and worship the dead. Others, I snap off the mattress, throw myself onto the porch, and argue with the grackles over whom my neighbor's illegal roosters prefer to hear sing. That's just the side of the sun I'm on. You for whom meaning is the meaning of beauty, be gone. You clap too loud to hear the rooster's response. Meanwhile, the clouds are proud of all of us. It's 12:01. A man dragged by a poodle says, "Good morning." Everyone in the orchestra stands up at once. One more. Remnants of Empire. The equestrian statues of kings from various plazas I've seen come together in the plaza of the mind, crowding a small garden with Charleses and Edwards. The stench of piss ringed around each base, making logical the many footprints denoting a darkness of soil between strokes of green. This impulse has to be questioned. A country is made up of people, as an ocean is a mausoleum of raindrops dying for unity, as the sun's embers yearn to be distinguished as flares. Why else put a statue up there, if not to say, in this land, these are the statues? Why not make them larger than life to imply history's bigness and dominance? You wake to it every day. Landscape of sun with burning horses. Landscape of landscapes superimposed. Bad idea. All the world aches. The aches accumulate into something greater. The horses carry something heavier than kings, metal, which is why they ordered their legs so thin, their bases so heavy, they cannot run. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That's just the side of the sun I'm on. I love that. One's on a t-shirt almost. And that's a really stunning reading and dedication to your grandfather. So thank you for letting us into that tonight. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Next up, we have Bernardo Wade. Born and raised in New Orleans, Bernardo tries at poems, catches elbows on the court, and wanders around the Bay, occasionally on Stanford's campus, is a Wallace Stegner Fellow. Previously the editor of Indiana Review, he now serves as assistant editor and poetry editor for Obsidian, literature and arts in the African diaspora. And though he's published in a bunch of literary journals no one in his family has ever heard of, they remain proud of him, especially when they are featured in those poems. His first full-length collection, A Love Tap, is out now from Lookout Books, the literary imprint of the creative writing department at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. He's infatuated with Ed Roberson's question, "Can you OD on life?" Welcome, Bernardo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here and hear everybody. It's really beautiful. I'm going to read a couple poems here. One's going to be a little longer, and then the one's going to be shorter. Yeah, this first poem is called This Shit Is Not Interesting. This is what I know about memory. It flickers when it feels like it. And right now, it lights every corner of the night. Nick and I got twisted off daiquiris. He had a toothy smile. He's gone. A story for another time. I still wish I'd stayed with him for another drink. But running late to meet Slim, I felt those achy chills creeping down the back alley of my neck. Here, I want you to remember Richard Pryor's Live on the Sunset Strip. His show after he smoked himself on fire, you know, where he lights a match and says, "What's that?" Richard Pryor running down the street. And like smoke, the crowd rises to their feet. It only takes the price of admission to see your boogeyman drown in the ugliest of his defeats. I know. This shit is not interesting. To the ones who knew off stage, Rich so often slipped away into spells of God, not again. And I, who disappeared that week, finally saw her text and flew across town because I knew this time she was serious. She'd thrown my shit, all of it, behind the dumpster. Hold on. Let's say a prayer. For the brothers who don't make it. God, bless the hot-blooded men who find blue lights knifing through the night. Amen to those who bear teeth, who fight. Thus, when I turned on the Durgenois Street, down the same one way, where 9 years later, I mourned a beloved killed by a drunk driver, a driver who could have been me. I saw those lights and thought to run, but then thought, hell no, and pulled over. I took the stage, knew it was my time to boogeyman into the light. So I lifted my hands just right, fingers spread so wide. You might have thought I was a flame. Now, pride does say that fire will sober your ass up quick. With the amount of dope tucked away in my drawers, I thought to swallow it, but there he was, Glock, already in my face. Don't you fucking move. When they tackled my ass, both my tennies flew away. Fuck. Fell from my lips when 12 found enough for a bit in my waist. He smiled, and I swear, I heard a round of applause. Like Pryor, I was a puddle of sweat when I walked off stage and read resisting arrest on those multicolored sheets. After a few hours of peacocking, my stomach tangled itself, clamoring for more, please, more. Until the ache for death knelt me down near a man who complained a half hour about his baby mama's expired tags before he saw the animal writhing. I lay so childlike, I could almost taste my mother's gumbo on Christmas Day, or how a soft blanket might feel against my skin. I know. This shit is not interesting. Unless you know the warmth that comes once a stranger takes his coat and covers your body on a jailhouse floor. All right, I'm gonna do one little more here. This is The Coming of Fox. This is dedicated to Lucille Clifton. And I kind of addressed the fox. It's about me and my dad. But Yeah, I'll just go into it. It's called The Coming of Fox. And Lucille Clifton has a poem after the same name if you want to read that one too. Okay. The Coming of Fox. Now gray, almost like smoke feeling its way against the wind. My father glides over, and you let him steal your bright flag of fur to his chest, nuzzling you so close, it almost feels wrong, watching his knuckles go soft, without shame, with the love he's shown me only once. The night I pawned his gold ring, and after getting my fix, returned to his arms. He embraced me, so close, I tasted his wine breath, and we were no longer a tangle of two fiendish men, but became ugly and tearful, seeing in the other an animal neither could hold. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Bernardo. As someone in the chat said, this shit is very interesting. Too interesting almost. Yeah, so thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right. Last up, we have Kalehua Kim, a poet living in the Pacific Northwest. Born of Hawaiian, Chinese, Filipino, and Portuguese descendant, her multicultural background informs much of her work. She is a 2023 winner of the James Welch Prize for Indigenous Poets and earned her MFA through the Rainier Writing Workshop at Pacific Lutheran University. A fellow with the Indigenous Nations Poets, her poems have appeared in Poetry Northwest, Denver Quarterly, Calyx, and Oiwi, a Native Hawaiian journal. A winner of the 2024 Trio House Press Editor's Choice Prize, her first collection of poems, Mele, was released by Trio House Press in 2025. Happy to have you, Kalehua.
Thank you so much, India. Aloha kako. I'd like to thank India, Kevin, and Emma for putting this reading together, as well as all of you who made time to share in some much needed poetry this evening. Thank you so much. And to my fellow readers, I'm just so thrilled to be here with you. I'm a little bit breathless. I'd like to share two poems with you this evening, both of which utilize Pidgin or Hawaiian Creole English. These are the rhythms of my community and my family, and especially now in these times, it brings me comfort to read these poems and to hear their voices, and I hope it does the same for you. The first poem is called After Her Funeral, I Dream That My Mother Tells Me Her Dreams. My mother came to me at the end. So many times she came. We would sit all quiet at the small kind table in her kitchen. But you know she wanted for sit at the window, yeah? Wanted for watch the light on the mountain. Wanted for watch you kids in the yard, playing in the grass, hiding between the trees for sneak up on the horses. But the horses, they could smell you kids coming. You never fool them. Just like I never fool her. My mother, she came so quiet. She never have to say nothing. She just wait. She wait for me, yeah? And I gonna wait the same kind. I gonna be like the horses. I gonna wait for you. This next poem is called Company. Try come, baby. Auntie not gonna hurt you. Can it make it better if you no come by? Oh, so big you came. Your arms stay long and your legs stay growing. Come sit by Auntie. Let me touch your head, baby. Auntie just gonna touch. Soft kind, see? No hurt. Here, feel this leaf. Cool, yeah? Gonna make your head cool and soft. Gonna be more better. Gonna help you sleep. Gonna make all the scar go down. Yeah, that's right. Sit with Auntie a little while. Auntie just take the leaf, put here on your head. Better, yeah? Then we wrap on the bandana. I thought you liked the pink one. I just gonna tie him in a back. Let's just sit together. We talk story. Bombay Auntie sing a song, but for now, gonna talk story about a beautiful girl who went bump her head just like you. That girl, Florence, when walking in the forest, wanted for pick flowers for Megaleya. But when she would reach up to the high tree, she fell, bumped her head on the way down. She cried, oh, she cried. She not so brave like you. She cried until her mother come. They take her to the big house, wipe up her tears and the blood. Still she cry. Her mother rock her quiet. Her mother put on the leaf, put 'em on her head, wrap 'em up, and they rock, and they sleep. Do that each night until all better. Just one small scar. No can see 'em anymore. She cannot even feel 'em with her rough, kind hands. That's right. Just relax, baby. Auntie stay with you. Oh, you can feel that. Just one small scar now, yeah? Your hands stay cold, baby. Let's put the blanket on top. Yeah, hold my hand on your forehead. And you keep yours on mine. We keep company, yeah? Thank you.
Thank you, Kailahua. I don't even want to talk anymore after that. I just want to sit in that language. That was so beautiful. Thank you for inviting us into your family and into your world like that. Makes me want to cry. That's so wonderful. Okay, I told you guys tonight was going to be special. So we're going to shift gears now and get into the conversation portion of the event as I have all the authors join me back on screen. And again, my sincere gratitude to our poets for the gift of language that you've reminded us of and shared with us so freely this evening. I really appreciate that. As a reminder, I know we already have tons of wonderful questions from the audience, but if anyone else has questions for our authors, please feel free to share it in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Yeah? So I want to go ahead and get us started. There is a question that actually we had from last year's events that I thought was so good, I wanted to bring it back just as an intro question. And this question is, what inspired you to pursue the path of becoming a poet? And did you have any doubts or difficulties when partaking in this pursuit that is quite often out of the norm? And if so, how did you overcome that to get where you are now?
Way to start with the hard question, India.
Might as well get it out the way, you know?
I didn't take a writing workshop until I was 30, and I thought that I was going to be a prose writer. But I was attending a workshop taught by Jeannie Clark, and we didn't have enough photocopies of the poem. And so I got to look at the teacher's copy, right? Which is always the best because you can see all of their annotations. And when I was looking at what she'd circled and where the arrows went, I thought, oh, that's what a poem is. This is the shape of a feeling on a page, right? And I wanted to chase that, like, and to make that happen because it just seems like magic to make those shapes and to be able to take something that is ephemeral, right? And to be able to look at it and say, like, oh, here's this home I've created for that.
Yeah, it's a tough question. Well, I think for the longest time, I didn't really think that I wanted to be a poet. I knew I loved books, I knew I loved reading, and I did try all kinds of forms. I went through the ritual passage of writing terrible novellas. I think all would-be teenage writers go through that phase. I was in a theater group, which was basically made up of my siblings, and I was the director. You're just going through all kinds of, you're just doing all kinds of ridiculous things and just having fun. When I started to sort of write poems, they felt very intense, they felt very private, they felt very condensed, they felt very elevated. But I thought it would be something I do privately, I didn't sort of imagine that it was the poems that would sort of find their way out into the world before the other forms. So when the poems sort of started to I found a community of friends, and we all wanted to write poems, so I wrote more poems. It turns out that um, to win the love of somebody you want to be with, they usually don't want them to write you a short story. They usually want you to write them a poem. So I wrote more poems, and so I was just sort of, the more I was rewarded for it, the more I just went in that direction. However mundane the reward was. And I think that's what has happened, even up to now. Like if somebody would pay me to write a novel, I would sit down and write a novel. I would try to do it, you know. So you just sort of get rewarded for it. Sometimes the reward is having great teachers say, "Oh my God, there's something here." So you keep doing it. I mean, I had the best peers during my MFA, and they were just so full of encouragement. So I kept writing. If somebody had said, "I think there's a novel in this poem," I would have sat down and said, okay, let me look in that direction. So I think that for me, it's just, I just felt pulled in that direction. I just kept going. It's just a foundational love for language in different forms. But poetry is what seems to be the most compelling form. It is where I seem to come the most alive. So I think that is what has made me stay with it to now.
Mm. I'll go next. Um I think my poetry started at about 2014. My sister sent me a typewriter, and she was kind of writing poems. And I had really gotten into like a spiritual path. So I probably had been in like a meditation practice for about 2.5 years. And that's when like the things started swirling, right? The language, the life, the past, all the things are kind of like, coming together. And then I had failed out of college like 4 times, not because I was selling drugs and stuff. And by the time I went back, I was just so happy that they let me back in college, right? That I had really forgotten that like I was going to study anything. So I went to the counselor, and the counselor asked me what I wanted to study. And at the time, I think I said two things. I said I've written a couple poems, which I think I had two, and I wanted to be a sports psychologist. That's what I told her. And she looked at me, and thank God she had an MFA, right? And so she went, "Your undergrad doesn't matter. So let's pick poetry." And I was like, "Bet." And so that semester, she put me into an African American literature class. And I think that was the moment, like that started happening, right? And like literally miscegenation, all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this is a world I could enter. And that was the beginning of my poetry life. Yeah, yeah.
I can go next. I feel like I had a similar thing where maybe it's a question I've been asking myself since I was a little kid, which is just, does it make me feel alive or not? And I think the first thing for me, I was a basketball player forever. And just the feeling of that is something I think I chase. And then eventually, writing poetry became my new basketball. And I look at it now, it's funny to me how outsized the poetry part is compared to the basketball now. I've also had like a bunch of knee surgeries from basketball, but um, that's a question I ask myself. Does it make me feel alive or not? And I get the sense sometimes, every poet's different, but for me, I want to enjoy doing it, and I want to enjoy being alive. But I also want to enjoy having a mind. And I think it's really important. I don't know, just to activate that part of yourself, and maybe poetry in a way is like a filter for all kinds of things, like real experience, but also imagined, desire, but also experience, like fact, history. And I just want my poems to be like this nexus where these things cross. Yeah.
I love all of these answers because I can relate to every single one of them. I think I came to poetry mostly because I started dancing hula when I was younger, and because there is chant and oli built into the language of hula and Hawaiian. There's a lyricism that exists in the way that we communicate through chant, through song, through our bodies when we're dancing. So it was a natural progression for me. So I've been writing for most of my life and always just for myself, thinking there's no possible way this part of myself could be prominent in earning a living or making my way in the world. And so, I had a regular 9 to 5 desk job and would take classes on the weekend, and just writing for myself for a long time. And it wasn't until my children were a little bit older and I had some breathing room and the opportunity to like leave my job that I could put poetry at the forefront. And at 50, went back to school and got my MFA, purely just because all these things aligned. I had support from my family, I had financial resources, I could do it. And it was sort of like, why the hell not? Like, I'm not getting any younger. So to be able to incorporate all aspects of my love of language and song, and be able to incorporate that intellectual capacity with sharing community and learning how to craft a poem, really sort of aided my trajectory into feeling like, okay, this could be really the forefront of my life from this moment on. And so through the encouragement, like Banga is talking about, like when people say, hey, that was a pretty good poem, or hey, why don't you submit here? That's really just the yes that you need to continue that journey. So I think I'm just trying to do it as long as I possibly can and enjoy it.
I love that. You all said that was a hard question, but then you answered it with so much ease. So thank you for that. I think this might feel a little easier, and this is from the audience tonight. Can you all talk about the process of finding a publisher that you feel really honors your work compared to simply finding a publisher to just be published? Was that in the forefront of your minds when you were looking to get your books published, and what was that like for you?
I'll go first. I'm a people person. I realized that about myself. And so it was really important for me to have that type of feel with my editor and my publisher. And we had a meeting. I met with them, and almost immediately we felt this love. We dropped in and we had that thing. And that's a lot of times what guides maybe a lot of my life, to be honest with you. But that's what I found, and I'm very grateful I found that. And I pray I can continue to like guide my literary life and relationships in that, principle.
I feel really lucky that I work with Susanna Tamminen at Wesleyan. And I think one of the things that's made our relationship successful has been to both be clear about expectations and also to be good listeners. And I feel really honored that she's right, like I think a lot of editing is listening for what's not being said, or for what or for what somebody can't say for themselves yet. And so we had a really fantastic relationship with editing my book and making sure it came into the world in the way that felt good to me. And then one of the things that I'm really excited about is we're working on another project together, an anthology, and she reshaped how contracts work. I shared with her my concerns about how Indigenous writing tends to be appropriated or misrepresented in universities. And so when we were talking about putting the contract together, she came to me and she'd taken the Indigenous style guide and applied it to Wesleyan's contracts and asked if that was something I'd be interested in continuing to refine with her. And so I think that having a publisher who really listens to both your writing but also your values is incredibly important, because I got to tell you, like, I didn't know a contract could be a love letter, but it was.
I think I had an experience that, when I look through the magazine, a lot of us seem to have, which is just taking our time. You know, I feel like there is this pressure, especially on the debut. And I wanted, of course, we all want to publish books, and I want to publish another one, but I think it's also I wanted to find a way into it that, I don't know, that made me feel like I had a lifetime of writing ahead, whether with, whichever publisher. I mean, I go look at poets that I love who have passed, and some of them have like 30 books and like 8 different publishers. And, those are, I don't know, it's 8 different relationships and probably more than that, right? Like at Four Way, I have great editors that I get to really have great conversations with them about the work. I mean, I'll give you one inside thing, which is just, when they get the feedback, I always say, like, when you get like the notes and stuff, about like 1/3 of the stuff that's said, I agree with completely. And I'm like, I will make that exact change. About like another third, I will say, not that exact change, but I agree something needs to happen. And about another third, you know, it's just me saying, actually, not putting my foot down. That sounds so violent, but just being like, this is actually something that, to me, in my vision, um, is essential for this poem, for this like selection of poems, etc. And I think you just want to have someone that you have the confidence in, like I do with my editor Hannah, for example, to just be able to talk to them about what direction you want to go in with different poems. And being able to do that really makes you feel a lot better about publishing a book in general. And it kind of demystifies it and humanizes everybody in the process all at once, which is one thing I really loved about my own process anyway.
Amazing. I think for me, I mean, like everyone said, I was very lucky. I was very fortunate. I found a very great publisher. Kwame Dawes was my editor, and is a dream of an editor. But at the time, at the point at which the book finally got selected, India could have been my publisher. Like if India said, you know what, I just started this cottage press, I would have given it to you. I was ready to give it away for free. I was done. I was so done. I had the next book in me. I wanted to move forward towards that. It didn't matter. I would have given it to anybody. And I think it says something about the creative process, that when you're that very tired, very exhausted point, which sometimes is also a form of surrender, when your ego is no longer attached to the thing. And when you've learned that the life of a writer, the life of a creative is full of multiple projects across a whole lifetime, you're not defined by one single project, right? It's this inquiry from project to project and this lifetime marathon. I think that's when things often happen. So I was there. I was so done. I was just like, anybody take this book, just, you don't even have to pay me, just, so it was at that point that I got a very wonderful news that, it was going to be with Kwame, who, many years before, I mean, what feels like many years in the context of my life, I'd actually selected my chapbook, and so somehow was circled back, and he was the editor of the series, but it wasn't one of the people who select the books. No, they're very independent. They do it without him, but he gets to edit what they select, So I was like, oh my God, this is just unbelievable that we sort of circled back to each other in that way. What it did for me was that it allowed me to see my own growth, I mean, this was my first ever professional editor, ever, years before with my chapbook, and then years later, we're back with a full-length collection. And at that point, I knew that, what makes a writer is sensibility, which is technical, but which is also about ethical choices, which is something that's generational, so that was just so beautiful to see, it brought great clarity. They were very helpful. They give you a leeway in terms of book cover, The contract as well was, was just so, was amazing. It was a great process. I felt very lucky with that. But the most important thing I learned was surrender. Sometimes the process is full of too much anxiety. And sometimes that anxiety is getting in the way. And when you're like, you know what, I just want those poems to get into the world. It doesn't matter how, sometimes things begin to happen at that stage.
Well, I think I'm responding a lot to what Benga's saying about sort of the submission fatigue. Uh, by the time there was a nibble, it was sort of like, God, I just want this first thing to find a home. And then to not get overly excited. I'm a very cautious person. I don't believe it's happening until way after it's actually happened. Like, I won't know that this reading happened until next week. I'll be like, oh yeah, I did that thing. But when I got a reaction from my book saying, hey, we're interested in talking to you about it, my first instinct was, okay, now I have to do a lot more research. Who do I know who's worked with this press? Who do I know that's worked with this editor? What can I do to go into this meeting with the most information I have possible, in terms of what the experience is like? Because it's like, okay, there is an offer. That means there might be another offer. And I want to make sure that this relationship works well and that the people they work with, the artists they work with, had been heard and seen, and that the experience, it's not going to be seamless, but that it worked in partnership throughout the publication process. So that was really important to me. And all of those things aligned. People I held very dear and respected, had worked with my press, had wonderful things to say about them. And then when I did agree and we worked it out, it turned out that Denise Lowe was my editor, who is here in the room tonight and is someone that I really admire as a poet. But she also is affiliated with Indigenous Nations Poets, which is an organization I love. So it just seemed that all of those, the ways that I could be held as a poet were happening. And then to work with my editors and to find that the relationship was, as other people have said, clear communication, straightforward about here's what my expectations are, how can we meet those, and have this become as enjoyable as possible. There are compromises, of course, that have to be made on both sides, but I feel really good about the product that came out of it and how our working relationship is.
Thank you all for your honesty. I really appreciate that. And Benga, I'll publish your poetry collection any day, so second one's on me. I got you on that one. Okay, I want to try to squeeze in 2 more questions if we can. Because there are so many good questions from the chat, so I don't want to miss too much. I think that questions about audience are always interesting, so I'd love to pose that to you all. When you write a poem, do you choose your language based on your audience, or do you let the poem write itself? And I might add on to that, what is your relationship to audience when you are writing? Is that something you're thinking about? Do you have a specific audience in mind? Some writers do, some don't. Yeah. How do you relate to audience when you write?
Just gonna go in reverse and Kelly, whose status up again?
Should I start?
Yeah.
Well, I because I wrote for myself for such a long time, I never thought about audience. And when I became when I was able to send out poems, single poems here and there, and they would be out in the world, then it started to be like, oh well, this is a print literary journal, and my family's not going to read it, and nobody I know is really going to see it. Like only like diehard poets are going to read these things, so it's totally fine. But that is a lesson I'm learning with the first book, is that I have no control how the work will be received and how I, as a poet, will be perceived and a person will be perceived. And that's been really interesting in terms of how I'm thinking about the work I'm putting forth for a possible second book. And that's probably going to be more at the forefront of my process now than it was with the first book. With the first book, I was just like, I don't care. I'm just putting all my stuff out there. And if people respond to it, great. But now people are looking, and there is a little bit of pressure with that. So I think it will be at the forefront of my mind at this point.
Amazing. I mean, I relate so much with that. I think one of the reasons the poetry is at the forefront for me, I think is that one art form where I'm just completely free. I can't even explain it. It's just something in my body when I'm writing a poem. There's no outside world, you know. I mean, I have to write academic papers as well in my career, right? And when I'm doing that, I'm thinking of the peer reviewers and all of those things, you know. But when I'm writing a poem, no. And I will add to that another question, you know, just a variety of this question we get when we do public readings. When people say, "Oh my God, that's so personal. That's about family. How are you able to read that?" Or what happens if family members ask you about that? And I'm always like, what? Who? I don't know what you're talking about. Like it's it's from such a deep place. It's not actionable. You can't take me to court for the poems. I'm like, what? They're metaphors, you know? So it comes from such a private place of freedom that I just never think about an audience or that an audience even exists when I'm writing them, even when I'm performing them, you know? It's like in a dance, it's like you're in a trance, you know? It's like your mind, it's like you're in a trance but with an audience, you know? It's the same way I feel when I'm, you know, talking with dear friends about literature, sometimes privately or sometimes on a panel. It's just the two of us, but with an audience. So I think that's what poetry writing has always been for me. The first book is out now, but it wouldn't matter, you know, going forward. It's still just always something intensely private. With my other writing, the academic writing, the oh Lord, you know, of course, you're always thinking, what will the people say about this one? But for some reason, now with the poems.
Yeah, I love those answers. I always think about whenever I get asked about audience, I immediately just think about community. And it's weird. Community, I think of as kind of a built-in audience in a way. And there's different ways of looking at it. It's like, is it a community of poets? Is it a community of, I don't know, like Latin American people who might be interested in my work, for example? Um, and that, there's those kinds of communities, and then there's just like the community for my own life, which is made up primarily of like not poets, you know, who do love and read my work, for probably very different reasons than my poetry friends. But I often think like, and I think also my first book wasn't thinking about this at all. It was very just like me writing, and it's like the greatest hits of my 20s is this book, you know what I mean? The next one, I think the question I'm thinking about now is like, what does my community need? And you have to balance between, you know, representing certain kinds of ideas, but also being an individual. Um, Admission into this kind of community depends on the presence of others, but also on what you do when you're alone, you know? I mean, not to say, you know, you could do collaborative poems and stuff, but it also depends partly on our solitude and on just effort when no one's looking. And in those moments, I find myself now more thinking like, when someone else is alone with this, what do I want them to think? What do they need? Do they need me to repeat back to them or represent to them certain things? Or, you know, it's, I don't know. I don't even know how to express it totally. It's just something that we kind of have to think about. And I ask myself this all the time. I don't have a great answer for it.
Is it me? All right, all right. Um, I think I came to poetry late, I was probably 30 before I really read a poem for real. And at that time I had a GED. So I mean, my 20s were a little, I wasn't an intellectual. I think that does guide my poetics in some way. I remember when I first, like Daniel, a lot of my revelations come on the basketball court. And it was me and Ross, my mentor Ross, and we were hooping and stuff. And I remember him asking me something about that. And it kind of came out flippant, but it was like the thing, become a real thing in my life, right? Is that I want to be able to write poems for the dudes from my court. Like I want to be able like to go back, sit down and read T a poem, and T's with me. And maybe not every poem, but this is, and that's been my guiding thing for some reason. And I think even that has evolved in kind of more of a sense of like, I want to write poems for my people. I want to write poems for Black people in New Orleans that hear the accents, hear the voices, hear the things, and go, "Oh my God, yo!" Like people from them schools come back and do stuff like that. Like that's the type of energy, that's the type of feel I want. It's a feel I think I'm after. And call that for the people, call that for whatever it is. But that's my thing. That's my thing. I don't have any. All the other stuff was land yap, as we say in New Orleans. Land yap. All right, that's good.
Think I had a really hard time with the concept of audience. A lot of the books, the project book and part of the project was about the objectification, primarily of women, of people who are multiracial. Also thinking about age and how, young girls are objectified. And so that raises the question, right? How do I, as somebody who's putting these topics on display, avoid re-objectifying what I'm critiquing? And so my question of audience was really complicated, and in terms of meaning, it made me feel stuck. And that was the last part of the book to come together, and I think two different things helped. One was really refining, right? All the audiences are multivalent. There are poems that are going to speak specifically to who you identify as your first community. There are generous readers. There are people who are reading because you went to high school with them and they want a little bit of gossip on you, right? And so, like, accepting that and then thinking, what do I need to say to my first reader, to the green girls and green women? And then also, what framework can I put around this to remind the audience of their own positionality? And my copy editor, Jim Schley, had a really great, the first piece of like poetic text ends up being instructions to the reader, because Jim was really encouraging about like, let's use this as a framework, and then maybe you can let go and pay attention to your punctuation. And so I wanted people to understand that one of the things that guided this book was Natalie Diaz's comment about empathy and how it's, like there's something a little creepy about the idea that you could step into somebody else's skin or shoes, and something that would acknowledge that distance um, between the speaker and the audience and make that the place where exchange happens, right? Okay, if that distance is there, what can you make out of it? What kind of comfort or discomfort can you evoke? And how is it that you can change your own like as the poet, your own perspective on what that relationship could be?
Yeah, thank you all so much. Okay, lightning round, last question, super fast response, only if it resonates with you. We asked this for 5 over 50. I think it's a really good one. Have any of you suffered from imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you overcome it? Don't think too hard about it. We don't have to go in an order, popcorn style.
I think that's a part of it. If you have to confront existence, it sucks. But that is it. And it hits all of us, and you got to go through the wall, or the wall kicks you out. I don't know. Like, and that's my answer for it. And it never gets easier. I never think I'm gonna win. I'm never like in none of it. I don't know. I don't know. If I come with the veneer of confidence, it's grace, because inside it's hard doing this, period, I think.
Yes. Yeah, yes to everything Bernardo said, low key.
There we go.
Yeah.
Anyone else before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think, right, like that's when you put something out into the world, that means that you make yourself vulnerable, right? So I think I've had imposter syndrome, and the the best way through it is asking, well, what am I lending my voice to? Right? Am I lending my voice to my community, to this idea? And what am I building towards when I do put my work out there? That's been a really guiding question for me, and not because it changes the imposter syndrome, but because it makes it worth sitting with discomfort.
Yes, yes. And I think for me, that's why I'm not able to, especially for poems, I'm not able to imagine an audience because, like how, that's why I have this so much denial when people want to talk about it in real life. I'm like, what? What? No, no. Yeah. But yeah, it's just just from reading James Baldwin, I think it's something that's never going to leave you. It's this imposter syndrome, a little bit of shame, a little bit of embarrassment all the time when you have a work out there. You just live through it. You just flow through it. You just keep doing it. Yes.
Benga makes it sound so easy. You just flow through it. I'm not very good at flowing through it at all. But I love what Bernardo's saying about grace, about giving yourself that time and space to be in it. And as Annie says, like to be with that discomfort, because really it does, I think it enriches the work and it enriches the place where you're coming from because you understand the true meaning of what it is to put your words out there and to put yourself out there. And we are all vulnerable beings. Every day we put ourselves, all of us put ourselves out there in different ways. This is just the way I have to figure out how to feel more comfortable in my skin every day.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, cheers to being uncomfortable. I think that means you're doing something right as an artist and as a human being. So thank you all so much for being honest in that response. All right. It has been very meaningful sharing virtual space with you all and listening to the five of you read and respond so graciously to tonight's questions. On behalf of poets and writers, I want to extend our gratitude to Kalehua, Bernardo, Daniel, Benga, and Annie for joining us over Zoom and adding your necessary and unforgettable collections to the world. We will drop once more in the group chat the links to our bookshop page, as well as the link to the online feature where you can listen to the author's audio clips on repeat as long as you want to and read the extended version of their responses, and a link to our membership page for those of you who would like to officially join the Poets and Writers community and help support our organization in the process so we can continue creating and sharing all our good work with you all. Thank you as well to our active Zoom audience for spending time with us this evening. You all are always amazing. Both yesterday's and tonight's events have been recorded, so a video of the combined readings and Q&As will be available soon on our YouTube page as well as on our website in the coming days. Alrighty, after 2 wonderful evenings, this officially concludes the celebration of our 2025 debut poets. Thank you all for joining us. A million thank yous all around, and please be well until we see each other next time. Yeah? Thank you all. Sweet dreams. Have a great afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you're at.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much for such a graceful session. Bye.
Bless. Thank you.